Did a group of Vatican nuns just shatter their sacred silence to expose a chilling cover-up that could unravel the truth about Pope Francis's final hours and reshape the Catholic Church forever? No alarms blared, no Vatican press office scrambled to issue a denial, no cardinal stepped forward to quell the rising storm. Yet when a small, cloistered group of Vatican nuns, bound for decades by vows of obedience and discretion, broke their silence with a cryptic, urgent plea, their words detonated like a shockwave through the Catholic world, hinting at a secret so explosive it could redefine the legacy of Pope Francis, upend the papacy of Pope Leo XIV, and alter the trajectory of the Church for centuries. On April 21, 2025, as Easter Monday dawned, Pope Francis suffered a catastrophic cerebral stroke that claimed his life by 7:35 a.m., plunging the Vatican into what insiders described as controlled chaos. Now, these nuns, long invisible in their quiet service, have issued a haunting call for Catholics worldwide to unite in prayer, not just for the soul of the departed pontiff, but for the cardinals tasked with guiding the Church through a perilous transition. Their letter, published in an obscure Catholic outlet, speaks of shadows obscuring the truth and urges the faithful to beseech the Holy Spirit to ensure the right successor was chosen. The implications are staggering. Was Pope Francis silenced, perhaps even held against his will, as powerful factions orchestrated a succession plan to control the Church's future? What did these nuns witness in the hallowed halls of the Vatican that compelled them to risk their vows, their reputations, and their peace to speak out now? Why has the Vatican responded with a wall of silence, neither confirming nor denying their claims? And could a mysterious video, allegedly discovered on Francis's personal device, hold the key to a truth so profound it threatens to shake the foundations of the 2,000-year-old institution? Let's plunge into the swirling mystery, the fierce confrontations, and the unsettling questions that linger in the shadow of Francis's death, as the Church stands at a crossroads between revelation and concealment. The final hours of Pope Francis's life were no serene passage into eternity. They were a battleground where ideology, power, and legacy collided with raw intensity. As the first signs of his stroke emerged at 5:30 a.m. on Easter Monday, the Vatican descended into a maelstrom of competing agendas, exposing fault lines that had simmered beneath Francis's 12-year papacy. Massimiliano Strasari, Francis's trusted aide and confidant, made an emergency call at 7 a.m., triggering a cascade of decisions that would reveal the depth of division within the Church's highest ranks. The debate that erupted wasn't merely about medical logistics. It was a profound clash over how a pope should die, who should control the narrative of his passing, and what his death would signify for a Church already fractured by his bold, often controversial reforms. A group of conservative priests, dubbed the Continuity Group by Vatican insiders, pushed aggressively to transfer Francis to Gemelli Hospital, arguing that its advanced facilities offered the best chance for survival. But sources close to the Curia revealed a more calculated motive. A hospital death, surrounded by the institutional trappings of modern medicine, would be easier to package and control for public consumption, projecting an image of stability and reverence for tradition. Progressive priests and Francis's allies, however, fought fiercely to keep him at Casa Santa Marta, the modest Vatican residence where he had lived since his election, rejecting the palatial apostolic palace. Francis spent his entire papacy shunning the trappings of power. One cardinal later confided, "Why would we force him to die surrounded by them in a sterile hospital room when he chose simplicity?" Dr. Sergio Alfieri, the Vatican's chief physician, arrived to assess the situation and found himself caught in a crossfire of agendas. Traditionalist priests questioned whether every possible measure was being taken to save the pontiff, some even suggesting that failure to transfer him could be seen as negligence, a betrayal of the papal office's sanctity. Progressives, meanwhile, pressed Alfieri to confirm that a hospital transfer was futile, arguing that moving Francis would violate his wishes and disrupt the spiritual significance of his final moments. Alfieri's decision to recommend keeping Francis at Casa Santa Marta was met with relief from Francis's supporters, but sparked accusations of capitulation from conservatives, who whispered that the decision prioritized sentiment over science. Yet the confrontations didn't end with medical decisions. They intensified as Francis's condition deteriorated, revealing a Vatican not just divided, but at war with itself. As Francis lay dying, factions within the Church began what Vatican observers called preliminary positioning for the post-Francis era, a scramble for influence that turned his deathbed into a stage for political maneuvering. Conservative priests, some of whom had openly criticized his reforms on issues like divorce, same-sex blessings, and synodality, appeared at his bedside, ostensibly to pray, but clearly to be seen as reconciled with the dying pope, bolstering their credentials for the coming conclave. Most shocking were reports that, during Francis's fleeting moments of semi-consciousness, certain priests attempted to secure his signature on documents that would reinterpret his progressive reforms, such as Amoris Laetitia, which softened the Church's stance on remarried Catholics, and Fiducia Supplicans, which allowed blessings for same-sex couples, in a more traditional light. These actions, described by one source as vultures circling a dying man, prompted a furious intervention by Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State. Witnesses described Parolin's response as unprecedented in its force. He physically removed several priests from the room, his voice trembling with anger as he declared, "This man deserves to die in peace, not be harassed for political advantage. Leave him to God." The incident, though kept from public view, sent ripples through the Curia, exposing a willingness among some to exploit even the pontiff's final breaths for ideological gain. Francis's final gesture, a weak hand raised in farewell to Strozzi at 6:30 a.m. before slipping into a coma, became a lightning rod for interpretation, a symbol of the man and his papacy. Some priests saw it as a surrender to God's will, a humble acceptance of death. Others viewed it as a defiant assertion of agency, Francis maintaining connection and control even as his body failed, refusing to let his death be co-opted by those around him. The decision to keep him at Casa Santa Marta, without a hospital transfer, sparked the final major clash of his life. A group of priests, led by unnamed cardinals, confronted the medical team, accusing them of deciding the fate of the Church by allowing the Pope to die in a monk's cell rather than a hospital. One reportedly declared, "You are robbing the Church of its dignity. This belongs in the hands of God and His healers, not in a guest house." Progressives, however, saw the simple setting as perfect symbolism. Francis dying as he had lived, humbly, close to the people, free from the institutional grandeur he had always rejected. Conservatives feared it set a dangerous precedent, signaling a rejection of the Church's sacred traditions and the papal office's institutional weight. As Francis's death became imminent at 7:35 a.m., the confrontations continued, spilling into the immediate aftermath and shaping the narrative of his passing. Cardinal Kevin Farrell's official announcement at 9:45 a.m., delivered with measured solemnity, was quickly overshadowed by competing accounts. Conservative media outlets emphasized Francis's medical decline, hinting at neglect or mismanagement, while progressive voices celebrated his determination to maintain dignity and simplicity until the end. The decision to dress his body in red vestments for lying in state, symbolizing martyrdom, sparked further debate. Traditionalists approved, seeing it as a fitting tribute to a pope who faced relentless opposition. Francis's supporters, however, questioned whether it betrayed his preference for simplicity, noting that he had often worn plain white cassocks, shunning elaborate regalia. The funeral itself became a stage for these tensions, with conservatives pushing for a traditional ceremony emphasizing the Church's authority and doctrinal continuity, while progressives sought a celebration of Francis's inclusive, pastoral vision. The compromise, a restrained liturgy at St. Peter's, with elements of both, satisfied few, leaving many to wonder whose vision would prevail in the battle for Francis's memory. The nuns' statement, emerging weeks later on May 10, 2025, added a chilling, almost apocalyptic layer to this already fraught drama. These women, part of a cloistered Vatican community dedicated to prayer and service, have long been the unseen heartbeat of the Holy See, their lives hidden behind convent walls. Their decision to speak out, through a carefully worded letter published by Nuova, an obscure Catholic outlet, marked a historic breach of their silence, suggesting they witnessed something so grave it outweighed their vows of obedience. "We cannot remain silent while the truth is obscured," the letter read. "We call the faithful to pray for the cardinals, that they may have chosen a successor guided by the Spirit, not by shadows. The Church stands at a crossroads, and only prayer can pierce the darkness." The letter's vagueness, coupled with its urgent tone, ignited speculation. Did the nuns overhear discussions in the Curia, perhaps in the tense hours before or after Francis's death? Were they present at Casa Santa Marta, serving as silent witnesses to the confrontations around his bedside? Some theorize they saw evidence of coercion, perhaps attempts to manipulate Francis's medical care, suppress his final wishes, or even control his communication in his final days. Others wonder if they uncovered a broader plot, possibly involving factions holding Francis against his will, to orchestrate a succession plan that would favor a conservative restoration. The Vatican's response, a deafening silence, with no permission granted for the nuns to speak further, has only deepened the mystery, lending credence to the idea that something extraordinary, perhaps unthinkable, transpired in those final hours. The nuns' claims come amid a swirl of rumors, some grounded in the real tensions of Francis's papacy, others veering into the realm of conspiracy. One persistent theory, fueled by the Vatican's technological evolution under Francis, centers on a mysterious video allegedly discovered on his personal device after his death. Despite his known aversion to cell phones, Francis embraced digital communication, amassing over 40 million followers on X and earning the moniker the first digital pope. Sources claim this video, recorded in his final days, contains sensitive reflections on topics too explosive for public release. Speculation runs wild. Could it confirm Vatican knowledge of extraterrestrial contact, a possibility the Vatican Observatory has openly entertained through astronomers like Brother Guy Consolmagno, who suggested aliens might have their own relationship with God? Some point to the serpent-like design of the Paul VI Audience Hall, built in 1971, as a cryptic signal to non-human observers, tying it to parallels between Marian apparitions, like Fatima's 1917 Miracle of the Sun, and UFO phenomena. Alternatively, the video might address restricted sections of the Vatican Apostolic Archive, whose 85 kilometers of shelving hold documents dating back to the 8th century. Could Francis have uncovered texts challenging the historical Jesus, revealing suppressed theological diversity? or exposing the Church's role during World War II, beyond what was revealed in the 2020 opening of Pius XIII's archives? Financial corruption offers another possibility. Francis's reforms of the Vatican Bank and the 2023 conviction of Cardinal Angelo Becciu exposed deep-seated misconduct. The video might name unprosecuted figures, detail hidden operations, or reveal ties between Vatican finances and external entities, governments, corporations, or even organized crime. Most provocatively, it could contain radical theological reflections going beyond Francis's public stances on climate change, interfaith dialogue, or same-sex blessings. Did he question women's ordination, clerical celibacy, contraception, or the Church's hierarchical structure in ways that could spark schism? Or did he share private mystical experiences, perhaps tied to the Fatima secrets, which some believe were never fully disclosed? The Vatican's refusal to confirm or deny the video's existence, coupled with reports of internal debates over whether to release it, suggests its contents, if it exists, could be seismic, capable of unifying religious and scientific worldviews or fracturing the Church's unity. These theories, while gripping, lack concrete evidence, and the nun's letter offers no specifics, only a haunting call to prayer. Yet their reference to shadows aligns with the documented resistance Francis faced throughout his papacy, a resistance that turned his death into a flashpoint. High-ranking officials like Cardinals Raymond Burke and Robert Serra openly criticized his reforms, accusing him of heresy over Amoris Laetitia or undermining tradition with his inclusivity. The 2016 dubia, submitted by 5 cardinals, questioned his teachings on divorce and same-sex blessings, while Bishop Joseph Strickland's 2023 dismissal reflected outright rebellion. An unnamed English priest's chilling remark, "We can't wait for him to die. He's like Caligula," revealed a visceral animosity among some clergy, echoed by an archbishop from Kazakhstan who claimed Francis's views let the smoke of Satan enter the Church. This resistance wasn't just ideological, it was strategic, with factions maneuvering to shape the post-Francis Church. The nun's letter may reflect their alarm at these dynamics, particularly if they witnessed attempts to exploit Francis's final hours, perhaps through coerced signatures, suppressed communications, or manipulated medical decisions to tilt the scales toward a conservative restoration. The conclave of May 2025, which elected Pope Leo XIV, Cardinal Robert Prevost, became a referendum on Francis's legacy, but also a crucible for these tensions. With 135 eligible cardinals, 80% appointed by Francis, the election was expected to favor a progressive or moderate successor. Yet the nun's warning, issued just days before the conclave, suggests lingering concerns about the process. Were cardinals pressured to favor a candidate aligned with the continuity group, perhaps through subtle threats or promises of influence? Did the alleged video, if it exists, influence the conclave's deliberations, its contents known only to a select few? Leo's election, as a pastor known for humility but not a radical reformer, may reflect a compromise to quell unrest. His first act, appointing Sister Tiziana Maletti, a Franciscan sister of the poor, as secretary of the Dicastery for Institutes of Consecrated Life, signaled continuity with Francis's inclusivity, placing a woman in a role historically reserved for male cardinals. Yet the nuns' silence since their letter, and reports that they've been barred from further comment, raise questions about whether their concerns were addressed or suppressed. The legacy of Francis's final hours is a complex tapestry of confrontation, mystery, and unresolved questions. His death exposed a church divided, not just between progressive and conservative, but between those who saw him as a prophet of humility, tearing down barriers of clericalism and rigidity. and those who viewed him as a disruptor of sacred tradition, weakening the papacy's authority. The nun's statement, though vague, underscores the stakes. A church grappling with its identity, its authority, and its mission in a world that no longer bends to its voice. Did Francis die as he wished, in the simplicity of Casa Santa Marta, surrounded by trusted companions? Or was he a victim of forces seeking to control his exit, to reshape his legacy before his body was cold? Was there a video, and if so, what truths does it hold? About extraterrestrial life, hidden archives, financial corruption, doctrinal shifts, or mystical revelations? The Vatican's refusal to comment, coupled with the nun's unprecedented plea, suggests that the full story remains hidden, locked in the shadows of Casa Santa Marta, guarded by those who fear its power. Francis's papacy was a relentless challenge to the Church's status quo. He confronted clericalism, calling it a perversion that alienated the faithful. He pushed for financial reform, stripping corrupt officials of power and exposing scandals like the Becciu trial. He opened the Vatican archives on Pius XII, inviting scrutiny of the Church's wartime actions. He embraced the marginalized, refugees, the poor, LGBTQ+ Catholics, while urging the Church to address climate change and economic inequality. Yet, his reforms met fierce resistance, from the dubia to Strickland's rebellion, from anonymous clergy venom to open accusations of heresy. His death, far from resolving these tensions, amplified them, turning his final hours into a microcosm of his papacy. A struggle between humility and hierarchy, openness and obstruction, the Spirit's freedom and the institution's weight. The nun's call to prayer is not just for the cardinals who chose Leo XIV. It's for all Catholics, urging them to seek the Spirit's guidance in a time of uncertainty and division. Francis's papacy challenged the Church to face its flaws, to pull back the curtain on its darkness, clericalism, abuse, corruption, rigidity, and to embrace a humbler, more inclusive path. His death, shrouded in mystery, demands that same courage, that same willingness to ask hard questions. Will we dismiss the nun's warning as rumor, the product of cloistered imaginations? Or will we listen, pray, and discern? Will we cling to comforting narratives, or dare to seek the truth, even if it unsettles us? The shadows are real, but so is the light, and the Church's story is still being written. Pope Leo XIV now carries the weight of Peter's seat, a cross made heavier by the unresolved questions of his predecessor's passing. His early moves, elevating Sister Tiziana, appointing bishops like Michael Pham in San Diego, Miguel Angel Contreras in Peru, and Dave Dean Capuchas in the Philippines, suggest a commitment to Francis's pastoral vision, lifting up voices from the margins, prioritizing service over status. Yet the nun's letter hangs over his papacy like a specter, a reminder that the Church's unity is fragile, its secrets potent. If a video exists, its release could spark reform or schism, bridge divides or deepen them, confirm faith or provoke doubt. If the nuns witnessed coercion, manipulation, or worse, their truth could demand accountability from the highest levels, forcing the Church to confront its own darkness. For the faithful, this is a moment of reckoning, not just for the Vatican, but for every Catholic who calls the Church home. Francis's life was a call to action, to live the gospel with courage, to serve the poor, to challenge structures that stifle the Spirit. His death, and the mystery it has birthed, is a call to discernment, to prayer, to trust in God's timing over human agendas. The women in the shadows, the nuns praying in convents, the catechists teaching in villages, the mothers feeding the hungry, know this better than anyone. They've served without recognition, their faith a quiet flame in a world of noise. The Vatican nuns who spoke out are their sisters. Their voices a reminder that truth, like holiness, often emerges from the margins. The Church stands at a crossroads, as the nuns warned. One path leads to transparency, to facing the shadows and trusting the Spirit to guide. The other leads to silence, to preserving the institution at the cost of its soul. Pope Leo XIV, with his quiet strength and pastoral heart, may yet steer the Church toward light, but he cannot do it alone. The faithful must walk with him, not as spectators, but as participants, living the mission Francis championed. A Church that listens before speaking, that serves before ruling, that loves before judging. The truth about Francis's final hours, whether a cover-up, a video, or a misunderstanding, may remain hidden for now, but the questions it raises cannot be ignored. They demand our prayer, our reflection, our courage. Don't turn away now. The Spirit is moving, stirring the waters of a Church both ancient and ever new. The nuns have spoken, the shadows have shifted, and the next chapter is coming, faster than we think. It may change everything, from the Vatican's marble halls to the humblest parish pew. Will we be ready?